Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Over the last couple of months, I've gotten quite a few comments on people asking about doing some desert weathering, as well as I've also noticed that a lot of you watch the YouTube videos on your TVs. So for this particular video, this whole video is going to be recorded in 4K. I'm going to kind of try it out, see how it is editing in 4K and how long it takes to upload all those things. So the video is not going to be too long, but what I thought I would do is give you a short breakdown on two different types of chipping and weathering on desert vehicles. And I'm also going to get to try out this new streaking grime for Africa Core vehicles. It's a gray color in there. So I thought using a few pigments and powders as well as the hairspray again, just like we did on some of the winter camouflage, also works really well on desert as well. So let's get started on it. Okay, the very first model that we're going to weather up in desert is this Dragon model, this 3-ton Opel Blitz that we built quite a while ago. Now there's a few parts broken off on it, but I use my old models like this as test beds for doing testing on painting and things like that. So I thought it's a perfect opportunity to show you guys on something that's already built, ready to go. Now what I've done on this vehicle is I've sprayed the entire thing XF63 German Gray over the entire model. Then I've sprayed it with TS80 Clear Flat Coat, and that's sealed in the entire paint job right here. Now you may notice there's kind of a little of a blotchy kind of shiny effect on it, and what that's come from is I've just used some women's hairspray and I put two fairly light coats on it over the entire vehicle. And what we're going to do now with this is we're going to do a chipping effect on it, and we're going to go ahead and spray a mixture of XF57 Buff and XF59 Desert Yellow. They're a 50-50 blend and kind of gives up a nice worn desert look for it. Okay, now I've just begun taking my soft brush, put a little bit of water on the front of the vehicle here to start chipping it. We're going to let that start to soak in. And the reason we've put the gray coat underneath the dark yellow, or the desert yellow I should say, is this is to represent like an Africa Core vehicle that during World War II, a lot of these vehicles were originally gray before they were sent down there, and then they were just painted either in the field or kind of haphazardly, and then after a period of time you'd see a lot of times the desert yellow start to fade off, or chip off I should say, and you start to see the gray coming through. So that's what we're starting to do right here, and as you can see, as the water starts to hydrate the paint and going through, it'll hit the hairspray and start to chip it off, and you'll start to get the gray showing through. Now once the plastic gets wet like this, you got to be very careful because the paint is gonna be able to come off pretty easily now at this point. You can also use a toothbrush for this effect as well. The problem with a toothbrush sometimes is it takes off a little bit too much of the paint because it can be a lot more aggressive than using the soft brush. So you can see that we're starting to get a nice chipping effect on the top here. And once again, it's up to you how beat up you want this to look. Some vehicles were pretty pretty bad. Others, you know, just had a slight amount on it. And then what you do at this point now, if you're happy with this this type of effect, go ahead and let it fully dry. Don't touch it anymore. And then what you're going to have to do is spray another coat of TS80 over that entire area, and that's going to seal in anything that we've done on here now, because you don't want to start doing any weathering over this, because the weathering will start to pull the paint right off of that as well. So I'm going to go over this, chip this vehicle up a little bit more on some of the fenders, the hood here, the roof, all those areas, and we'll come back and show you the next step. Okay, here we are. Here's our second type of desert weathering I'm going to show you guys. Now what this is just an old Dragon M3 kit that I'm kind of use every once in a while to do paint testing on. So what I've done here is I've just sprayed it all over with a mixture of XF57 buff and XF59 desert yellow. Mixed it together in this and just kind of got like a desert color that we're going to use. Now I've sprayed this not very neatly, obviously, because that's not the purpose of this video. It's just to show the weathering technique. Sprayed the entire vehicle with that color, then gone ahead and sprayed the vehicle with TS80 to seal in all of our paint job here. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to take some of this packing foam, and the packing foam comes with electronics, things like that, and what you want to do is just tear off kind of a jagged little piece on it. Kind of zoom in here for you guys. Now we're going to take our chipping color, and this is the chipping color we use. That's a 70% NATO brown, 25% NATO black, and 5% red. Put a little bit in a little container here, and then you want to blot out quite a bit of it so there's not too much on the sponge. Now you can see how the chipping starts to appear. Now we're gonna once again overdo this, and this is because of showing technique. You can put on as little or as much as you want on your vehicle. However, if you want to make it look like it's been sitting in the desert for 30 years, it's your model, you can go ahead and do that. And you want to hit any of these high areas too, like hinges, things like that. You really have to make sure too that the majority of the paint is out of this, so you don't smear it all over the regular paint job. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over the rest of the vehicle and chip that up, and we'll come back and show you the next step. Okay, now I've heavily scratched that, obviously, so but this is more or less so you guys can see it and how it's going to look. Now we're just taking a little mineral spirits, odorless ones, and putting a little coat of that on here. Because what I like to do is very, very little, but we are going to put a little touch of rust on these areas. And I live in Phoenix, Arizona, which is the heart of the Southwest desert here in the United States, and things do rust out here, believe it or not. We don't get much rain, but when it does, you can definitely start to rust old vehicles. So I'm just taking a little light rust here and just putting on a little bit around some of these edges. Not super heavy, just in some of these areas here. And then we can just take our soft brush again and kind of streak it out, kind of blend it together a little bit. Now next, because we're using the desert yellow type of, we're going to use streaking grime for DAC or Africa Core stuff. And it's actually a gray color inside. And since we still have the thinner on there now, just take a little bit. Touch it along some of the edges here, around some of these other pieces, around the hinges and bolts, things like that. Now because it's a top surface, I'm kind of blend it in just kind of a random pattern, because there's really no way it's going to flow any one particular direction. And with the enamels, you have plenty of time to blend it, so however dirty you want it to be. Now when it comes to the side you do want to streak in a downward pattern, because that's the way water would flow down and pull some of the grime on it. Kind of show you a little bit more here on the front with some of the gray. Putting it on a little bit heavy here, but you don't have to worry about that because it can come off pretty easily. Just take your flat brush again, put it in the odorless mineral spirits. And just go to work on it. And enamels are all about blending, so you've got plenty of time to let it to wash over, and even if it dries a little bit, just put a little more thinner on, come back and hit it again, and it's ready to come up. That is why it's so important that you do put a clear coat down, because that'll totally protect your underside paint job. So we've let the product dry now for probably about maybe 10-15 minutes, and as you can see, it's starting to come out pretty cool that way. That we get a nice look of a really weathered effect, and you can always, like I said, go back, blend it in more if you want, or less. It's totally up to you. But you can see with just a little bit of paint and a couple of washes, in a matter of minutes, you can really beat up your vehicle and really make it look like it's worn. And once again, you can do as much or as little as you want. I did a little bit heavier on this one here to kind of show you the concepts involved with using those products. Some of the streaking over on this side as well. Okay, the last thing I did was I just took a little bit of our Vallejo Pigments Desert Dust and applied a coat over the entire top here using a soft brush, blending it in. And then after that was all dried, or was dry to begin with, after we got done with that, just took a cotton swab and kind of went over some of the bolt heads as well as the edges here to make the rusty, dirty effect, chipped effect pop through a little bit more, just so it didn't hide most of all the work we just did. Now, I didn't do any of the weathering on that first Opal truck, and because the weathering was going to be exactly the same on this, it was just going to have a different type of chipping underneath it, so you'll get the general idea on it. So I hope you enjoyed the video in 4K, those that are watching it in 4K. Please let me know down in the comment section below if you enjoyed it that way or not. And please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.